Welcome to this podcast is making me thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This episode 66. Today's guest is a veteran screen, stage, and TV actor. He's an alum of the iconic comedy troupe Second City. He's appeared in three classic John Hughes films, including as Carl the Janitor in The Breakfast Club. You know him from Justified, Big Sky, and of course, he played Jerry's accountant, Barry Prophet, in the classic season 5 Seinfeld episode the Sniffing Accountant. Please welcome John Kapelos. John, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. It's cool to be here.
Yeah, this is great, John. So take us back, 1993.
Yeah, yeah.
I know you were filming Forever Night, the detective show in Canada, but you got the call.
Did I do Seinfeld in '93? Was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
September of '90 it aired.
Yeah, I think
Um,
Forever Night was a dead issue for me by that time.
okay,
So
so
that's why, because my hair was I was sort of in a looking for work phase. So that's why I guess my hair was kind of long. And FYI, but think if you want to talk about Forever Night for 1 second, which they basically dumped me. They were going to go into a third season, and they were getting off of CBS, and they were going to USA, and they wanted us to do younger. So they decided to dump me, and so I said okay.
Were
I
you
mean,
still in Canada
they
when
wanted to relegate me to a different part. So
okay.
and so what month? When did I shoot Seinfeld? It
said
was
it shot in September of '93.
that
It was
sounds
the fourth episode. So yeah, how did you audition for Barry Prophet? Did you have some to the show in any manner?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It was
Curious how the whole thing came about.
yeah. Your internet is kind of whooshing
Yeah,
in
the
and out.
internet's a little off there. Hold on.
You um I'd love to talk about. I mean, obviously that's what we're here, but my my recollection of Seinfeld, first of all, is quite vivid and strong because it was
Awesome.
one of those experiences. When you work on a hit TV show, it's kind of like a cauterizing experience because you're coming on when the show is like sizzling hot. And that's what was happening with Seinfeld at the time. I mean, I can recall several other shows that I've worked on, fortunately, in my career, like Miami Vice. I worked on the first season, and Desperate Housewives. I did a stint on it. When they were hot, hot, hot. But the thing about Seinfeld that was cool, first of all, is because I came from Second City of old, um, was that like Larry David and the whole crew were not only at the top of their game, but there was a confidence in working with them. So, I mean, I get the sides faxed to me at like 2 in the afternoon, and I'm in like, oh, what the fuck mode. We're like, oh God, really? They're asking him to meet for Seinfeld, and I was pretty casual. I mean, my hair was really, I just remember that, and it's like sort of like being kind of very dressed casually. And I got the sides, which is the scenes, which was, I think, I forget exactly what scene I read for. I think it was the one where I first come into the restaurant.
Yeah, and you
Uh,
kind of make fun of them for eating there. That
yeah,
kind of like
I think that was the audition scene because it wasn't the Michael Richards scene. Anyway, I'm trying to be specific about it, but um, it was one of these things. They say the meeting's at 4 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon, and I live in Hollywood, and it's just over the hill at MTM or Mary Tyler Moore Studios or CBS Radford now. But in the old days, it was the Mary Tyler Moore Studios. So, I'm probably giving you too much detail, but
no, no, we're all about
when I listen
detail.
to
This
these
is what
old
we do.
Hollywood guys talking about, yeah, I used to drive over to Warner, and that's where I met
We
Humphrey
no, we hear
Bogart.
this a lot. People said getting to the studio some of them was a pain. They didn't want to go to the audition, and their stories. We love these stories.
Well, the thing is this. I mean, you get a fax and say, that you're going to meet here, and let's be real about this. I'm not the only guy in town that's going to read for this, right? So, I go to the meeting, and it's at around 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon. Yeah, around 3:30, I think. It's later in the afternoon. So I read, and I go into a room after, and the casting person comes out and goes, "Hey, John, listen, do you mind if you just hang around for a second?" I go, "Oh, okay, yeah, no problem." And I sit there for about 5 minutes, and not a long time. Then they come back and say, "Listen, would you mind doing the 6 o'clock or 5:30 network read?" I said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, we want you to do the part, and we'll straighten it out with your agent, and we got to read here at 5:30, and then tomorrow you'll start rehearsal at 10." I go, "Okay."
Wow, right there on the spot like that,
That's
huh?
how I got Seinfeld. And I'm telling you guys, I mean, aside from being offered stuff, when you audition for stuff, you usually go back home, you sit, you whittle, you fret, you forget about it, and then they might call you or they might not, and weeks later you hear something and you get it. But in this case, it was like bing bang boom, you're in a box. And so, and I don't know whether you're hip to this, but every day at the end of, I'm sure other actors have told you this, but when you do shows like this, you do a network reading every day, where all the people come from the network and they sit there, and all the writers come out with their scripts coiled up, and you do a run through, a very tense run through, where people they're laughing like that, trying to get it to work. And they're always, I would come from improvisational theater where like the audience was real and
Right.
the laughs were real. So when you're in a situation where you've got some people looking around going, "That's funny, isn't it?" But in the Seinfeld thing, they weren't pushing it that much because it was fucking funny.
So when you I always like to ask this because you mentioned that was your audition scene, and it's the first line you give is sort of like, what are you guys doing in this place? Are you in this place?" Like, you had this kind of an arrogant attitude about yourself, and I'm curious, like, how did you see the sniffing accountant? Like, I mean, what was he like, how did you 'cause to me, he could have been on drugs, could have not been on drugs. You played that so well that it was like he led the audience on the whole time,
Well,
with
I
this
mean,
sort of attitude that I love it because the best thing about Seinfeld is there was no formula to that show like most sitcoms. So you were always waiting for like, oh, I figured this out at the end. It's gonna da, da, da. But when the Seinfeld never was like that, especially that season and that your role was like that, where I was like, you don't know what's gonna happen here with this guy.
it's a good question because I've never really talked specifically this much about this episode, although I've sort of skipped through it on other interviews and stuff. But the cocaine element is interesting because I know people that have done cocaine. Let me just put it that,
Right, right.
and maybe some of them have been me in a former life. But um, the thing about people doing blow in movies and sniffing and all that stuff, it always to me seemed to be so obvious. I mean, when somebody doesn't know how to smoke a cigarette in the film, you can tell, and
Right.
and or they don't drink properly or something, you know. So having been around people that have done cocaine, putting that generously, and being in Chicago in the '80s, um, and having attended John Belushi's funeral more than anything,
Right.
um, where they were doing brown and white lines off the table at the blues bar just in the shadow of the World Trade Center. There was Keith Richards and all these Hells Angels, and I said, "What the fuck? These guys are yeah, John's dead, but they're waking him." It's like, oh, really?
Oh my god.
That's called a woke experience. Anyway, that's a little sideline. You can cut that out if you want. But the thing about the cocaine is, I didn't really want to tip it. The whole thing about doing a thing like that is you just don't want to tip it. So you just want to keep it ambivalent. Anyway, and you just talking, and and like people are going, "What the? What's Is the guy gonna have a cold or what? I don't know. Everything's cool, And if you do it intermittently and try not to address it, if you're really on blow and you're heavily on the stuff, the people are usually really paranoid, right?
Mm,
But there are people that in life that do it and sort of get by on it. So that's the way I sort of looked at Barry Prophet, was like, if he's doing it, he's sort of like, hey, yeah, anyway, everything's cool, you
right.
know? And like,
Yeah.
you had to keep the ball in the air as to whether is it the sweater, is it this, or is it that, right? And of course, it was always the drugs because the guy was probably just a, you know,
Yeah,
I mean, at the end, I mean, I have to buy the ending because that's the way it worked. But
Right, Jerry did say that, but
it's funny, you can't really play it hard. because if the guy was a real freak, then it wouldn't have worked. And you're doing comedy too, right?
So what? Yeah, what background? I mean, rumor has it that Jerry had an accountant that essentially stole 50 grand from him, and I think blew it on drugs. Was there any background you got on actual Barry, or what they tell you?
No, none. And as a matter of fact, I think that they wanted to firewall that because, and I didn't mind that. Um, I think Tom Torona said to me something about, there's a lot of truth in the character you're playing. So that's about as close as I got to that rail. I think Jerry, just to work on this, I don't know what other guys have said, but Jerry was a guy that, at least when I worked around the guy, kept his cards pretty close to his vest, and was very concerned about not getting any stuff on his white shoes. Um,
Interesting.
and like that was it was fun, but serious fun. Um, Julia, I knew from Second City and from the Practical Theater Company, and from the New York people, and I know her husband Brad, and a lot of people in our circle. Um, but no, there was nothing, no inside baseball as to this guy's a real dude.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, it was the pinnacle of Seinfeld, and you were on season 5. We rank that either season 5 or 3 as, the greatest season in television history. But I mean, and we ranked the Sniffing Accountant number 12 all time in Seinfeld.
Yeah, we
Which
had it in
Really
top
good.
15.
I
Number
mean,
12.
I didn't know that. I mean, I gotta say, when I say pinnacle, and it was that late in the series. I remember that, but still, the Larry David and the energy these guys had, they weren't phoning it in, man. And a lot of people, you go around town and you go into the third or
Right.
fourth season of a lot of these shows, and a lot of people are just like, yeah, when's my break? It's like, but um, I thought there was a lot of energy. I mean, the scene I saw shot with Michael Richards, we should talk about, because that
oh
was.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to get to
I
next.
mean,
Go ahead.
we got whatever, however you want to direct this interview. But
No, let's
No, go
hop
ahead.
into it.
Yeah,
I gotta tell you honestly. I mean, I've been thinking about this in before talking about this. I have to be really frank, because I think a lot of good actors do. I sometimes get really major league stage jitters, and I was really nervous shooting that scene in the restaurant when we first come in, and I'm like that. And I think I underplayed it, and was very speaking almost softly, not even as much of an acting choice. It's like I was kind of scared. I was intimidated working with these guys, and that's the truth. I mean, I don't know how many actors would admit that they're kind of like scared shitless when they come into a situation. But the other thing about coming into a TV show like that is, like, it's always like the first day of school, and everybody else knows one another except for you, right?
right.
And
From
you're
what we
coming in
heard, they're
there with
pretty
like your
inviting,
pants.
though, right? Yeah.
You're coming. What?
I was just saying, from what we heard, they're pretty inviting, even though they have that aura.
They were, but
Yeah,
still,
but still, it's gonna be, yeah, of course.
it's a mind thing, and everybody was nice. There wasn't any question about that. Um, you know,
So yeah, so let's hop to the scene, right? So
Yeah,
you're at Pete's Tavern, I think is the outdoor, but essentially, you know, they're stalking you. Kramer goes in, and
it's
from
one of
what
the
I
greatest
heard
scenes of all
is,
time.
one of the greatest scenes of all time. Is Was everything scripted? Was a lot of this done? All right,
Hey, go ahead. Let's hear. I mean, how many takes was it? I mean,
well, I
what did
mean,
he? How'd you keep a straight face?
well, I don't know whether you guys have heard any other interviews, but I've talked about this. But I'm more than happy to talk about it again and probably go into more detail than you need. But um,
Details. We want details. Give us
well,
details.
first of all, I really am pissed off that Michael Richards got such bad play out of that thing that happened years after at
Yeah,
the club. Because I'll even start to get emotional about this, because the guy really works his ass off. And I don't think I saw anybody work harder on that show. I mean, and I say that with emotion because I really think that he got a bad deal there in terms of. So that day when I worked with him, he was actually quite he was really a sweet guy, but he's really unto himself, and he's like working on his stuff and boom, boom, boom. This guy works hard and he's fucking funny, right? So we're about to shoot the scene, and I think we rehearsed, or sort of there were lines were there, but um Larry David comes up to me just before the scene we're about to shoot, and we have a studio audience there, and everybody's there, and Michael's in tune, and I'm all ready to go. And he says, "Listen, John, whatever you do, you cannot laugh. Okay? You cannot you cannot blow a take here for us because we do not know what Michael's going to do. The camera doesn't know, the editors don't know, nobody knows, but we're prepared for him to do whatever he's going to might do. And if it's great, and if it's funny, and if it blows the roof off, you cannot laugh, all right? You just cannot laugh, right?" And he was really pretty intense about this because Larry's not a funny ha-ha guy, right? He's sort of a funny, and when he's serious, he's like, so I'm going, okay, and I'm getting it because he's really being serious. Because if I fuck up a take, then there goes TV history, right? Um, and I take my work seriously, and I also took how Michael was just dodging in and out of the humor. So the whole bit. So basically, what I had to do, we do a take, and he does some stuff. Now I can't honestly remember, guys. I can't remember the number of takes we did because I just sort of immersed myself in the process. But I do remember after one or two takes, and the audience was going ape shit, and the cameramen were laughing, right? Cameramen have to hold themselves and sort of like, and sort of take their hands off the camera so that it doesn't shake. And the audience was all to my left, and Michael was to my right, my stage right. So, as I recall, so what I did was I bit my upstage cheek, and you can kind of see during the thing when he starts talking, my jaw clenches a little bit because I'm biting into my cheek so I don't laugh.
Mm.
And when he did the thing where sometimes I like to get high all the time, and he has the beer with the cigarette and then he drinks it. That was totally not in anywhere, right? And he does it, and all I want to do, and the audience is going ape shit crazy. And the cameraman, everybody is, and I'm aware of that, but I'm here in the scene, but I just want to laugh, right?
Right.
Because normally at Second City, I was kind of the funny guy, not the straight guy. So to be there in that situation was great, and enlightening. But fuck, he was funny. And then he drinks the beer, and then they open the bar, boom, and it hits his head, and all that shit happens, and that was electric, right? And at that moment, I really thought I was going to pee myself. I just really didn't, and I hung on like a good rodeo rider and made it through, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah,
And
incredible. I mean,
so to answer your question, nah, I mean, a lot of that, they just sort of said, watch out for what happens on the road and don't get hurt and don't laugh.
Yeah, and I recall Barry just pointing. You had that big like college or high school ring on. I'm gonna sit over there. I'll never
Yeah.
forget that.
When I come
I
back from
always,
the bathroom, I'm going to sit over there. Don't
yeah.
take it personally. Yeah.
I always this
And
this. Oh, sorry.
just, and the fact is that yeah, Michael's just great. Michael was just really great. I know I got a little bit teary about this because, I really think that I really got upset because it always happens to such good people that they sometimes get the most unfair stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think he got a raw deal, and I've heard you speak a lot, about your father. You treat everyone with dignity, and I know that's important to you. And I think we should kind of do the same. People deserve second chances, but
Yeah, well, I also believe, we're in this heavy world where everybody's talking about so-called cancel culture and all this other stuff, and there are people that deserve to be put away for good, and then there are whatever you've had keys to the kingdom and you fucked it up, and there are people that like just make mistakes, right? Just make mistakes,
yeah,
and you know, I think that there's a little bit too much. Um, I think there's a little bit too much of a hard line sometimes when people just fuck up.
that's why. Listen, we're here to just talk Seinfeld, have some fun. So back to that scene when you're in the toilet. I gotta ask you, it doesn't sound like you. Are you the one that yells, "Hey, what kind of nut are you?" Was that you?
No, no, I think that they dubbed that in
He
later.
They
dubbed that
dubbed
in,
that.
but
All right, I picked up on that. I didn't think it was you, but just
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah, no, no, no. I didn't mean to be a bummer talking about that stuff before, but I'm really happy for Michael because I think he's recovered
no,
from
I
all that.
mean, we've talked to every single guest star we've talked to now close to 30, I think. Every single one has made a point to say how professional he was, how much he practiced. Like they would always see him off stage practicing going in the door, like how dedicated he
Incredible.
was. This everyone has made a point to say that, like incredible.
Well, yeah, and like that's just the truth. But you know, I don't think that I've ever been more exhausted after a day of shooting than I was at that night of
Right, I would
the
imagine,
treatment.
yeah.
But
So, what else did I know you mentioned Sharonis told you like this, this character's, gave you that one line. Anything else as far as because we love him. I mean, as far as we're concerned, the show took a little bit of a different turn after he left, but still great, season 6 and 7. But anyway, anything else you remember about him on set or even Larry per se, like where they, had given you any type of because your episode was we talked about this before. I know Harris mentioned just so many guest stars in your episode. Pat Cronin, who we've talked to, is Farkas. You had Estelle and Frank Costanza on your episode. You had Newman there, Krista Miller. I mean, so many people. Were you there the
who's
whole time?
the wonderful actor that played
Sid Farkas
Costanza? Hmm?
that played Sid Farkas,
Um, the guy that there was the Farkas was the boss,
the bra, yeah.
the bra guy, and also
Newman,
the woman she went off and did a
Krista
series of
Miller, yep.
yeah,
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 I
she's
mean, so you're there the whole week for shooting, right? You're seeing
well,
all the
Kristen
scenes.
also I think her aunt is Susan St. James,
I
the
think
actress
so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're
who
right.
is the actress. Yeah, anyway, because we talked about that. It was an old TV hand.
Oh, okay.
And she's sweet. And who's the other actor that played Elaine's
Richard
boss?
Oh,
Fancy.
Richard
Oh,
Fancy.
Richard.
We've been
Dick,
trying to get him on for. We love him. Littman, we love him. We love that scene, the
I've
exclamation
worked with
points.
Richard. Richard's great.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great scene. That's a great scene. Yeah, I should. You should get him. You should get him.
We
But I mean, yeah. So you were on set, right? The whole. I mean, we've never seen a show that's that, and they talk about this a
we rank it
lot.
number 12 for a reason.
Well, I can go back to the Tom Chironis thing just for 1 second.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Tom is, I believe, Greek American because we talked about that because I have Greek roots. And what the thing about him was that I didn't have a tremendous amount of interaction with him because the guy was kind of a, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this maybe from others, but he was kind of a silent but deadly type.
Hmm.
I think that um, on a lot of really good shows, I think Larry David and Tom had a really good working relationship from what I saw. And that to me was, I think, and Tom really directed very, very well. I mean, he just was, very, very assured as to how he wanted to do it. And again, the cast had a certain amount of confidence that, you know, you got to really, really come in. It's kind of like being a bass player for a band that like coming in and playing for the Stones for like one set. Like they just, it's like really, they know everything here, so you just try to, and that's fun, but that's why I said it was intimidating. I'm trying to remember anything specific about Tom aside from that, what we had for lunch, but no.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, we know you're probably most well known as Carl, right? But not to us. But to us, it's I mean, even in the show, Littman, Sid Farkas, and Barry Prophet. I mean,
Well, the thing is, honestly, but it's between Carl and this. It depends on
really,
the day. Yeah, it's a lot of people. Seinfeld's huge in terms of viewership,
Right,
and also people and the thing that I found because I love the show is the people that love the show. Right? Boom.
right.
So
And look at
there's a
us.
real you know embrace of it, and I was
did you?
fortunate. I'm
Did
fortunate.
so? Was that the only time you auditioned for the show? Was this role? Wow. It's funny, yeah, we've talked to a lot of guest stars and they come in 1, 2, 3 times and never got the role, then finally they got that role. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean,
Listen, there is a casting agent in town that I've been in for the last 30 years. I've probably auditioned for this person more than 200 times, and I've never been cast by them. And there are
Insane.
people that I go in for once, it is such a strange, not, I wouldn't say strange business, but just sort of the odds on doing stuff. It's like, playing cards at this table, you could win $1 million. Playing cards over here, you could never win.
Yeah,
But it's also the kind of the synergy when meeting people. Like, the Seinfeld group was, you know, when you really look back in terms of the history of television, I think that it was probably a period where I think the sitcom had really reached a point of kind of perfection. Because
yeah,
as you know, television has changed. We sort of went into reality TV land, and now we're into the sort of streaming universe where it's all a bit different. But the thing about Seinfeld was that it was kind of the pinnacle of that kind of
yes,
genre.
it was
And I
to
have to
us.
say,
Yeah.
guys, honestly, it's tough working in sitcoms as an actor. I've never really enjoyed the form that much. And Seinfeld was one of the easier ones because the comedy wasn't forced.
Right. There was no form. There was no formula. I was trying to say that before. Like every sitcom beforehand, and I watched a lot of television with the Reese Company to Gilligan's Island to Brady, all the way up to the 80s, everything. And I got to Seinfeld when it was airing live, and like you're looking for the formula, the way that punchline joke, and here's how the story's gonna go every week. That wasn't Seinfeld. So I'm watching it the first two seasons. I'm like, this is so much different than anything else. And then it just was like it was unbelievable how they just stuck with that. And they were just like, and to your point, I think we talk about it's the last sitcom. It really is like it ended everything since then has been, you know,
And people can talk about Friends and sort of Will and Grace, but I think Seinfeld kind of was an end of an era sitcom.
yeah, for
And
sure.
you look also at what was I going to say? Like, I worked on Home Improvement, and Home Improvement was a hell of a lot more formulaic, in my opinion. It
Oh
was
yeah, of course.
totally
It
formulable.
was just, he's gonna get in trouble. Something's gonna happen. The guy's gonna tell him what to say. In the end, everyone's happy. I mean, that's
Yeah, you're right about the setup joke thing too. It's just so predictable. And have you guys, like in your travels with Seinfeld, did they augment a lot of their laugh with canned laughter, or yes, no?
later on they did it more, is my understanding. Seasons 8 and 9 for sure was a lot more.
Yeah,
My
I was
understanding is
curious about
early
that.
on it wasn't as much, but I don't know. Maybe
Let's
Harry's different take on that.
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, the show became a little gimmicky and cartoonish. That's why I mean, you were in season 5 where it was the
That's
absolute
the
peak.
top. That's
But
probably the
you, I
top
mean,
three
you
to
have
five.
such a comedic background. I know, John Candy was a mentor of yours. I mean, going from John Candy to Jerry Seinfeld, Larry David, I'm sure there's some similarities between those guys. I'd love to
Honestly,
hear about.
it's really, really interesting that you say that. And maybe it's not what you're going to want to hear, but all three of them are incredibly serious. And Steve Martin, I would add to that
Yeah, I was
mix.
gonna say Steve Martin. You
Roxanne,
got
right?
the two, right?
Or Gene, or
Roxanne.
even Gene Levy. I mean, there's a seriousness, and Michael Richards. A lot of these guys. There are lots of guys that are, "Hey, how are you?" They're all the time like this, right? But then there are guys that are incredibly stoic and to themselves, and their comedy is, I would even put uh, Rob Corddry. I mean, I worked with him a little bit, and very little bit, but these guys are, their comedy is focused. Um, what can I say? I mean, we even like go to a person like John Hughes. I mean, that
Mm.
he wasn't a performer, but there was also incredible amount of focus there. But the thing about Jerry Seinfeld that I sort of appreciated was that he was, of all the guys. I mean, I don't know what you probably, when the book is written. I mean, I did a episode of a show called Platypus Man with Richard Jenny.
Oh, Richard Jenny. Yeah,
Yeah, and there's a sad story, right?
yeah.
And I played his brother on the show. And a lot of comedians, right, were given, like, of course, Tim Allen, and a lot of successful ones and some not so successful, of course, Roseanne Barr, etc. we're given shows. And I think to Jerry's credit, he used his platform very well because he's not what you would say a stellar actor, but he worked within the parameters of who he was.
Right.
And I thought that was the smartest way, like Jack Benny did, like a lot of guys sort of, you know, and they created this character of the sort of the enhanced Jerry Steinfeld sort of thing.
Well, it's funny. We just had Matt Goldman on. He's kind of one of the founding fathers of the show, the original writer. And he said Jerry went into a meeting with NBC and pretty much they said, "You're going to do this." And he goes, "I'm doing it this way because I'm happy to be a stand up comedian. So we're going to do it my way." So it's like he was just so
Oh, to his
stubborn to your
conviction.
point, like not
Yeah.
rah rah funny, like this is what I'm going to do. And he stood by it. So yeah,
Well,
you're spot on there.
and the other thing that you may not know about my career, in the just sort of a little background on this, is that around 86, 87, 88, and even a bit later, I was developing a show at NBC, so I was working a lot with Brandon Tartikoff, and I had my own production company at NBCP. So I was around when Jerry was pitching his show, and when all these comedians were coming in and doing that. And I was a Second City guy, and I had a show about a single musician who had a kid. My wife had gone off and become like Madonna or Cher, and I was in Chicago and I was running a music booking business, and it was called Monterey Jack. And I had this 8-year-old son who was precocious, and if you wanted 500 oboes to play Inagata Davida, Buckingham Fountain in Chicago at noon, I was your guy. And we had this series and stuff, and they decided to go with another series about a single father who's a musician called Blossom, right?
Oh,
So,
Ah,
oh, look at that.
and I was up for Moonlighting. I was up against
Bruce
Robin
Willis.
Williams for Garp. It goes on and on. But that said, in my, and I have no regrets in my career. It's just the way it is. But I remember Jerry. I remember when Jerry came in and pitched at NBCP. I wasn't in the room, but and like he was one of the smart ones. A lot of people were trying to were swinging from not their center. What was the female comedian? She did very well, sort of Texan. But
Caroline in the City. I don't know.
Ellen.
no, I'm thinking about another sort of woman, female comedian who had her own TV show sitcom. But anyway,
Marilyn.
forgettable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're not doing a podcast about her. But all in all, I mean, the taping evening was really intense because we did two shows. You taped two shows back to back, right?
Did you go to the wrap party for that season?
No, no.
Mm. You touched on it. We were remiss if we didn't ask you. I know you kind of touched on it, but maybe there's a little more there. I'm hoping as far as a connection between John Hughes and a Larry David or John Hughes and a Jerry Seinfeld. As far as, I mean, like you said, the vision perhaps, or just how particular they were about what they were doing. Um, I don't know if it's comedically. Comedically, it's I can't see it as much, but maybe you can from being there as far as their comedic senses. But maybe just from a leadership standpoint or showrunner standpoint.
Comedically, they're different styles, no
Yeah,
doubt. I mean,
yeah.
it's tough to compare them in that regard. What I can talk about in terms of and again, even to Steve Martin, are these guys that are auteurs. In other words, they're their sort of own thing, right? And Jerry is very much his own vehicle, right? So he writes and produces and does this stuff. I think the brilliant thing that he achieved with Seinfeld is that he, along with Larry and his team, and I'm forgetting about his gosh, who are the guys that represent him?
Shapiro,
Yeah, Shapiro West.
Shapiro and West, right?
Those
Yeah.
guys were always around.
It's his
With
crew.
his crew, there was a real sense of letting the boy do his work. Let the kid do what he does best. And I
Yeah,
think,
they were kind of they blocked the execs probably a lot too from getting to
and
them.
if I was, to say when I first worked on 16 Candles with John Hughes, it was basically the execs that sort of said, okay, let the kid do what he's doing. Let him do what he does best. And it's, presumably what they let great artists do is like,
If they're
step,
smart.
if you're smart,
Yeah,
and then ultimately they start futzing with you. But
right.
But that's his crew. Like your crew was what Haggerty, like he who also was on Seinfeld. I believe
Rudy's
after
vintage.
you, he was Rudy's
Wait a
Rudy's
minute,
vintage.
you've done your homework. You've done your homework.
Well, yeah, I know you guys were close in Second City, and he's a funny guy.
I love Mike. I'll tell it. Yeah, Haggerty,
His
Richard
scene with
Kind.
Kramer. He had a great scene with Kramer. You both had two of the best Kramer scenes of all time in that when actually, well, yeah, Kramer and the raincoats and everything. It was
And
amazing.
then Richard Kind. I worked with Richard. And Isabella Hoffman, Megan Fay.
So with
You know,
Garland too, right? Jeff Garland. And you never got
Jeff
the
Jeff
call
was a
to
little
go to
behind
Curb,
me.
do an episode of
Yeah,
Curb.
Jeff was a little bit after me at Second City, so he
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
in the company. But yeah, I know Jeff. We all know Jeff. And, you know, Second City was an incredible place to work. Phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean Chicago has spawned even just at Seinfeld we've had Pat Finn, Mark DiCarlo. Like it's a breeding ground for funny.
Have you talked to Pat and Mark?
Yes,
Yep.
amazing guys. We love both of them.
Oh, really? I think they're both assholes. And I'm just can I have language on this show? Or
Oh
what?
yeah,
Of course.
really. Let the explicitives fly.
Well,
Kramer at the
because
dentist office.
Mark DiCarlo and Pat, you see, these guys I know from way back when.
Yeah.
Haggerty and I auditioned together at Second City, so that was a great day.
All right, well, John, put in a good word for Haggerty with
Yeah,
us,
we
and
love
he'll
him.
pop
Rudy's
on.
Vintage Clothing. We'd love to have him.
Oh, Haggerty he'll do your show in an Irish heartbeat. He's a good man, and don't tell him that I said that.
Well, listen, John, this has been it's been an absolute treat.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Well, thank you. I hope I didn't talk too much.
No,
Yeah, you were great.
We really
The
appreciate
one,
your time.
the one and only Barry Prophet.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope the sty gets better.
Oh my gosh, I'm
And,
going to show the audience so they don't think I'm messing around here. I can barely even open my eye. I'm
in some circles, I might be considered sexy. Not You look a little bit like John Cassavetes,
okay. I'll take it.
one of my favorite actors. You look like him, after he's been beaten up in some sort of, ever see the movie Johnny Staccato?
No.
No, he did a TV series called Johnny Staccato
Okay.
in the late 50s, like John Cassavetes.
Amazing.
All right, well, thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, John. We really
John,
appreciate it.
thanks
man.
so
This was
much.
A blast. I really like it. Thank you so much, man.